And luckily, I know ex-police officers and people who worked on the FBI. I could not find out through the parole board, but they wouldn't tell me where he's going. But I prayed that he wouldn't be anywhere near me and my family. And I talked to an FBI agent that I knew, and he says he's 200 miles away from me. That was answered prayer. He was nowhere near my family. Bear with me still. My oldest sister, after I got saved and started praying and never saw answered prayer, and I was getting tired, oh Lord, I'm doing what you're telling me to do. I'm praying, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, but I never saw any results. Well, my oldest sister, got divorced, and she called me up crying. I invited her to church, and during the offering to come up, I looked at her and said, "You want to go forward and talk to somebody?" And we walked forward, and she got saved 7 years ago on Father's Day. Answered prayer. Just going back to the songs, how amazing He is. My nephew, he turned out to be a partier like me, and a year ago at Rock the Light, they were throwing this huge beach ball around. And my sister grabs it and says, "Please pray for my son, Ricky." Well, my nephew, he was playing the field, had a girlfriend, got her pregnant, be a year old this November, and up until he got saved, which was about a month ago, he never saw his son. I'm going to back up and tell you how he got saved. My sister called up and says, "Hey, your nephew Ricky saw Jimi Hendrix." I said, "Yeah, right." Well, he was playing in a park with his girlfriend's son, and these group of guys came up and said, "Hey, it's really nice to see a dad and son playing in a park." And he goes, "Well, he's not my son, but I treat him like my son." Well, they started talking to my nephew Ricky, and they had guitars and stuff, and they started singing, and they asked him about his salvation. A year ago, Rock the Light, we wrote that on the beach ball. "Please pray for my nephew Ricky." A year later, he got saved. Power of prayer. How amazing is he? I started seeing prayers get answered that I've been praying for years. And come on, Lord. My mom, I'm jumping around, my mom, when she asked me what was different, I told her, "The only thing different about me, Mom, is I accepted the Lord." And she asked me and my daughter, at the time my daughter was maybe like 6 years old. Her and I started witnessing to my mom. And she goes, "Well, I pray, I do this, I do that." I said, "Well, Mom, do you know the Lord is your friend and your Savior?" And she goes, "I don't know what you mean." So I explained it to her. And that night, she accepted the Lord. And when my mom passed away, I looked out the window, and I told you there was a huge thunderstorm and lightning. Well, at 3:40, when I looked out the window, the lightning storm and everything was gone. Just a big black sky. I'm like, "Okay, Lord, you got me out of the room." She wanted to die peacefully. She didn't want nobody around. I said, "Okay, Lord, you took her, and I know she's with you right now." And I called my best friend, Frank Lopez. I said, "Hey, Frank, I need to have breakfast with you." So I'm driving on the highway to I-70 going to Denny's. And I'm like, "Lord, I got to know my mom. I know she's with you. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying, but I got to have assurance that she's with you." Well, this sky was pitch black. But off to the east, there was this white cloud that looked like a flashlight making a silhouette around it. I wish I get a picture of that drawn, because it was so beautiful. I'm like, okay, Lord, is that where you're telling me she's at? Because the whole sky was pitch black. And that was answered prayer. How amazing is our God. He answered my prayer right then and there. Now, going back to my nephew, after he got saved, I called him up and I said, hey, I heard you got saved. He said, yeah. I advised him. I said, listen to what I got to say, Ricky. I said, right now, you're in God's hands. I said, there's going to be a lot of things happening to you, good and bad. I said, Satan's going to throw tons of stuff at you to make you think God don't care. I said, you got to trust him. I said, trust me. I didn't trust him when I got saved. I got in predicaments, and I turned to him and prayed and got out of the predicaments. I said, you're going to be facing a lot of stuff, Ricky. Well, he called me 3 days later. He goes, I found out what you're talking about. But he also said he prayed that he wants to see his son. Well, 3 days, number 3 in all these scenarios, been popping up a lot. On the 3rd day after he got saved, his ex-girlfriend called him up and said, would you like to see your son? Answered prayer. How amazing is our God. He was dealing with a problem. He's in the Air Force. He's dealing with a problem through the Air Force for the past year and a half. He was getting tired of it. So him and his girlfriend turned to prayer. 2 days after they prayed about the problem, his commander called him up and said, don't worry about what's going on. It's taken care of. You're approved to do what you want to do. And right now, he has orders to get shipped to Iraq. My sister's praying that he don't go, but as of right now, that's his orders. That's what my nephew wants to do. He wants to protect our country. Answer prayers. How amazing is our God. I don't want to go to Iraq, but if he does, I'm going to be all for him. Going back to my dad when he got murdered at the pro hearing, and after Stanley Bissell got out and I found out he was 200 miles away, I was sitting there talking to, again, Frank Lopez about the situation. He goes, Jim, why are you worrying about it? He's 200 miles away. I said, well, Frank, you don't understand. You could have a car, he can come by, and if I see him, as a human, you have that, there's Stanley Bissell's aspect. I forgave him, but I hope you guys understand this. I forgave the guy for taking my dad from me, but in the human aspect, you don't want to seek revenge, but there's something there that you want to do, but you know you're not supposed to. So me and Frank, again, prayed about it. And I said, Lord, I know I forgave you, dude, but there's still the aspect I want to do something to him. Well, needless to say, about 2 years after he got released, I was in Liberty, Missouri, at Walmart, of all places. And guess what I see? Stanley Bissell. And my wife looks at me, and she goes, what's wrong, Jim? I said, I need you to pray for me right now. She goes, why? I said, there's the dude who killed my dad. I walked by him, because the way the aisles were, I walked by him, and I looked at him, and he looked at me, and I knew me and my dad looked a lot alike. I knew he looked at me, and he knew, I had a gut feeling he knew who I was. I looked at him, just nodded my head at him, he nodded back. And right then and there, prayer and how amazing is our God. I could have just reached out and tore his head off. But God told me to nod my head at him and walk away.